Well, hey there. Welcome to the Strong and Sculpted podcast. This is me, your host, Kim Constable. And this podcast, of course, is about all things strong and all things sculpted. And I'm kind of like tripping over my words a little bit here because I am so excited for what is about to come. Today, I am interviewing none other than world famous bodybuilder Dorian Yates. Now, if you don't know who Dorian Yates is, let me just tell you a quick story. Whenever I first started training with my trainer, Marc Getty, I remember that Marc put me through a leg day that caused me not to be able to walk properly for about 9 days. I'm not joking. My legs, I think, were sore for 11 days after I trained Marc. In fact, I remember saying to my husband, Ryan, at the time, I was like, Ryan, I actually think I've damaged my legs. He was like, you haven't damaged your legs. I was like, no, I swear to God, I think I really have. I've damaged them. Like Marc's damaged some kind of muscle fibers. And he was laughing at me as I was walking backwards down the stairs. A lot of you will have heard this story before. And the reason why I had, gone through so much pain training with Marc was because I had never trained the way Marc trains. Now, Marc trains using a style of training called high intensity training. High intensity training is, what you guys are all familiar with. If you follow me, it's where your training is pretty short. You've only got maybe 4, 5, 6 exercises per training day. You're only maybe training 4 or maximum 5 days a week if you split your leg days. But the principles of high intensity training is that you go to concrete muscle failure in your final set. So you're basically overloading the muscle, you're stimulating it in such a way that causes it to grow. Now, Marc first became aware of high intensity training through following Dorian Yates. In fact, I would go as far to say that Dorian Yates is kind of one of Marc's, or not only one of Marc. Dorian Yates is Marc's bodybuilding idol. Okay. So whenever I first started training with Marc, I was asking him, well, who are your guys that that you would follow, or who do you really look up to in bodybuilding? As I was getting to know Marc better, and he said, Dorian Yates, he said, Dorian Yates, I've always just adored Dorian Yates. And I didn't even know who Dorian Yates was at the time because, I was a professional bodybuilder, but, he very much has a male audience. But whenever you hear him speak, you will just absolutely love him. He's so knowledgeable. He has so much to share, but apart from anything, apart from just being an absolutely awesome guy, the way Dorian Yates trains and what he knows about training can get people results in such a short space of time. It's the reason why training in the way Dorian teaches, which he will say isn't his style of training. He actually developed it first from Arthur Jones, who developed the Nautilus machines. And then from there, Mike Mentzer picked it up. And then he picked it up from Mike Mentzer and kind of adapted it into his style of Dorian Yates training. And this style of training really does get spectacular results. I mean, you get results so quickly training this way. And I am testament to this because anyone who has seen my progress photos will see how fast I built muscle training the way that Marc trained me and the way that Dorian Yates trains as well. So whenever whenever I told Marc I was training Dorian Yates, I think he actually cried a little. Like, have you ever seen a grown man cry? Well, I saw a grown man cry that day because this is really Marc's idol. But, I have, of course, followed Dorian Yates and his style of training. I've listened to his podcast. I've watched his videos. It's very much the way that I like to train, very intensely, with real guts. He actually has I think a video out called Blood and Guts, which really is quite intense to watch it. But whenever I first heard about Dorian Yates, and obviously whenever I started this podcast, I've reached out to him a few times just asking him, could I interview him? And then finally, the time was right. I do believe things will happen when the time is right. And Dorian responded to me a couple of weeks ago and said, yes, he would be, free for a podcast interview. So we set up the podcast interview for today, and I cannot wait to share Dorian with you and to share his training philosophies with you, simply because it's okay for me to sit here and say to you guys, this is the way you need to train. This is the fastest way to build muscle. This is how you're supposed to do it. But whenever you only hear it from one person, you do kind of wonder, is it really? Or, unless you've tried it yourself, it's really only theory. But then whenever you hear someone like Dorian Yates, who was 6 times Mr Olympia, he had 15 major contest wins in his career, but he also won the Mr Olympia title, which, if you're not familiar with the Olympia, is the biggest bodybuilding show in the world. And he won the title 6 times in a row. That is literally unheard of. You can count on one hand. I think there's only 3 or 4 people who have won that title many years in a row. It is a spectacular feat, and he really does not do very many interviews. You will find, podcasts, interviews and different things with Dorian, but they're usually only on, big podcasts like, Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss and people like that. So to even have him here talking to us today is such an amazing feat. You have no idea. So can you tell now why I'm excited? Dorian and I also said, we share a lot of the same philosophies. The first one, or the main one, being like, neither of us give a fuck. We're just like, don't give a fuck. Just be who you are. Do what you want to do. Live your life the way you want to live it. And just don't worry about what anyone else says. And anyone who trains as hard as Dorian did and has that philosophy is right up there as a winner in my book. So let's go to the interview with Dorian now, and I will chat to you guys at the end. Hey, Dorian, thank you so much for agreeing to this interview. I know I said I was fangirling all over you a second ago, and I totally am, but I really appreciate you being here.
My pleasure to be on here. I'm currently on lockdown in Spain, so I'm kind of, we're stuck in the house most of the time.
Oh, that's great. So I have you for about 3 hours then, do I?
Yeah, you got me. I can't escape.
Oh, I'm teasing. Dorian, like I said, I've been... this has kind of been on my radar for a long time to interview you. And I've listened to many, many podcasts actually, where you discuss your training and all different stuff. And of course, I do want to dive into that today as well. But I am really, really interested just to start, about your background, because you were born in Hurley in a small village in Warwickshire, which is in England, obviously across the pond from where I am. What was that like?
Well, I grew up on what we called a small holding. So it was not really a farm, but it was a kind of a small farmhouse and a few fields. So my mom was a keen equestrian, and she used to do horse riding lessons and so on. And we had dogs and ducks and chickens and things like that. So it was very kind of outdoorsy lifestyle, and I did a lot of walking and biking and stuff. So it was a good healthy lifestyle for a kid, I guess.
Mm-hmm. But you lost your father when you were only 13.
Yeah, I lost my father. He died of heart attack. He was only 42. And shortly after that, my mom met somebody else, and we moved to Birmingham, which is a bit, was a bit of a change going from the more kind of rural to the city. So that was a change. But I mean, eventually that's where I got introduced to the gym and to weights and so on. So maybe that wouldn't have happened if I was back in Hurley.
I have 4 kids, and one of mine is 13, and I can't even imagine what it would be like. It's such a formative, time in a young man's life.
13 years old, you just as a boy anyway, you're going through puberty, you're becoming a man. You really do need that male role model there, I guess. I think it's only like later on when I could really like be analytical about it to realize how much of an effect that was, especially at that point.
Yeah, because you have a son yourself, don't you?
Yeah, I have a son now. His Lewis is 35, and I have a daughter, Tanya. She just turned 19. So I've got 2 kids of my own.
But tell me then, whenever you were still a teenager, you became a skinhead and got involved with a gang. Is that right? Tell me how that happened.
Yeah, well, kind of loosely gang. It's more like skinheads and punks and mods and, all these different kind of genres and fashions that when I was growing up, that was just the way it was. You were probably in one of these groups, or you're a bit off the scene,
Yeah. Do you not find as well that, I am obviously, professional bodybuilder, nowhere near your level, of course, but, own a large company that I started myself, so I suppose I would call myself pretty successful. But do you not find though that I know as a teenager, I was horrendous. My mother always says I was her biggest challenge. I got into drugs and into drink and into bringing home bad boyfriends. And, I think that,
I did the same. I just didn't bring any bad boyfriends. I left home at 16, so I had no parental, guidelines or anything. I was just kind of on my own and with my friends and stuff. I'd stay at friends' houses, eventually got my own little bed sit and so on. So, we're just wild kids who didn't have anyone there to like monitor us really.
When did you get serious about weight training, Dorian? Like, when did you think, this is something I could really excel at? Was there an aha moment, or?
Well, maybe I was sent to detention center for a few months when I was 19, and in there they have a regime of physical regime of training and marching and all this kind of stuff. The idea was to get these kids where they're still young and teach them discipline and, hopefully get them away from a life of crime and so on. I don't know if it worked, but with me, I was introduced to circuit training there and weights. And again, I was very good at it. I fell in love with it. And I stood out from everyone else there. So I thought, oh, this is something that I'm good at, that I can work with. And it's something positive. And I want to do this. I want to do this when I can, when I get a job and I get stability. I want to do bodybuilding. It wasn't something casual. It's like, I'm going to do bodybuilding and I'm going to compete and I want to win competitions and I want to build my life with this bodybuilding. I wasn't thinking about winning Mr Olympia or anything along those lines, but I knew that it was something that would be positive, even if it was just, it got me a job or something like this. At that point, I didn't know the extent of how positive it would be, but it was something I was definitely going to pursue, and not casually. It was, something very serious. And when I started training, I stopped drinking, I stopped going out. I just put everything into the bodybuilding.
Yeah, if I try you on, actually, which is what I love to do, try on how that would feel, kind of 19 years of age, 19, 20 years of age, it must have felt good to have something to really focus on and channel your energy into, almost like.
Yeah, it was total focus. And I look back now, I had absolutely nothing. I mean, I didn't have a car or anything until when I was able to get a car was when I eventually opened the gym. And I opened the gym because I won the British Championship when I was 24 years old, and somebody else recognized my potential and so on, and they financed the gym because I had no money to open the gym. I had no money for anything. So we opened the gym. I started getting a salary and a car. So, all like most of my friends and people my age, they had a car, they had a job, they had this and that, and maybe they had more things materially. But it never bothered me at all now looking back. I just knew I was doing this thing that I really loved doing, and it was something very different. And I wanted to be different from everybody else, and I wanted to build my life differently. And I could see it happening, even though, I told the story once, I won the British Championship, and it was a big deal, winning the British Championship. All the people from the gym there, I think it was like 2 bus loads, and people from the magazines were there. There was thousands of people there. It was a big deal, best in the country. But I still went home to a council flat in Birmingham with not hardly any furniture and no car and no money. So, I was fortunate that somebody recognized something in me and potential, and they backed me with the gym. And that was when I, first started to earn a decent kind of income.
Yeah. Do you not find though, and this is kind of a little side topic, it's the same it's not the same with me at all. I train, and I train every day. I train 5 days a week, and, training takes up a lot of time, a lot of intensity. It feels really good. And so I think that as human beings, we have a natural need for adversity. We have a natural need to channel our energy into something. And I find that if you're not channeling your energy into something like training at the gym or, lifting heavy weights, really, taking your central nervous system, everything takes a bash, you're wrung out at the end of it. Then you will channel your energy into something like, spending or drinking or, whatever, but you can't physically do both, I feel like I certainly can't go out and drink or party. I never buy clothes because I'm always in gym gear. I think that it takes up so much of your physical and mental energy that you don't really have time for a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like entertainment on the other side.
Negative pursuits, maybe you could call perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you've got that commitment to your training and you want to get results out of it, then that going out for a few drinks is going to mess up how your energy levels the next day and how you feel, and you're going to the gym, and you just choose which one's more important to you. And it's going to be, if you've got your goal, then it's going to be going to the gym. So That's the way I saw it. I'm putting my energy into something positive, and out of that, something positive will come back to me. And fortunately, that's the way it worked out.
Tell me about, I love that you said you've got a goal, because whenever people join any of our programs, but usually our 18-month Sculpt and Shred, the first lesson in the members area is goal setting and measurement.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing we get people to do. Tell me about your thoughts on setting a goal and why it's important.
Well, this is something I learned very early on, and something that helped me with that was keeping a diary, keeping records of all the workouts and diets and everything like that. So I could be analytical and set myself long-term goals. So for me, a long-term goal would probably be a yearly goal, which at some point after the first couple of years turned out to be competition, because I was a competitive bodybuilder, amateur and then professional. So I was competing every year. So that point would be the long-term goal, if you like. And then I would break that down into shorter-term goals, like what am I going to try to achieve this month? And I write that down. And even from workout to workout, I would review this. This is what we did last week on legs, at X amount of kilos for 10 reps. And that's my goal this week, is to beat that. So I'd have a goal even for each workout, each month and year. And you've got something to work to. And you're breaking this long-term goals into shorter, more achievable, visible goals. So it's like if you want to climb Mount Everest and you just look at the top, which you probably couldn't even see, we're covered in clouds. But anyway, it would just be so daunting. Like, how can anyone do that? But if you were to say, okay, well, that's a long-term goal and I'm going to do it, but let me focus now on getting to this first ridge, this first point. And when I get to that first point, then I'll assess, and then I'll aim for the next one, and I'll break it down like that. And each one of those little steps eventually will lead to the big journey. But if you're trying to look at the big journey, then it's too daunting. It's too far away. So that's why it's important to break it down into little goals that are achievable. And then you get that feedback when you're able to achieve that goal, that you've done something, and you're more motivated then to try and do that and get a bigger goal.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I love it. So just a next step process then at the end of the day. It's just the only way you can feel to achieve your goal is to not take the next step.
Yeah, and to visualize your goals as well actually happening before they do. This is kind of visualization or manifestation, whatever you want to call it. Different names for the same thing.
Were you doing that even back then?
Yeah, like even for each workout, or maybe when I'm doing cardio or walking or something like that, I used to think a lot and visualize myself at a contest or looking a certain way, and just keep putting that kind of input into my mind.
Dorian, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on today specifically is because I am the training that I teach in all of my programs, and we have a full suite of training programs, shred programs, building programs, but the training that we teach in all of the strength training is, this is what I'm going to get into, whether it's yours or whether you would say it's Mike Mentzer's or Arthur Jones, whatever, but it is, high intensity training. And I do actually give you a massive amount of tribute in all of my programs for this style of training. But I do practice high intensity training taught to me by my trainer, Marc Getty, who learned it from you, not directly from you, but from you indirectly, through studying you. But you were an early proponent of the shorter sessions, but with higher intensity. So what was your training like whenever you were, really training hard as a professional? Like, how many days did you, a week did you train? For how long? Can you break it down?
Progressed, and, to give credit where it's due, the whole, the philosophy, the science behind high intensity training originally came from Arthur Jones, who was the guy that made the Nautilus exercise machines. So his idea was then taken by one of his sometime students, Mike Mentzer, that went on to be Mr. Universe, compete in Mr. Olympia, and was a big star in bodybuilding in the 80s. Mike took those principles and maybe adapted them a little bit more for competitive bodybuilding, and also commercialized it by calling it heavy duty, and a lot of people bought the courses and got interested in it and so on. So those were the guys that came before me, and then I took that information that they developed and kind of tested it on my own body and my own recovery, and maybe changed it a little bit. But the principles are there. I mean, the principle is that you're going to train with a degree of intensity to muscular failure, and something that your body's not used to, basically. So it's going to adapt to that level of stress. And that level of stress has to be balanced then with enough time to recover from the stress, because no recovery, there's no progress. So you need stimulus, you need recovery time, and then you need overcompensation time. So that's the basic idea behind it. And I have no doubt if it's performed correctly, then it's the most efficient way to build muscle in the shortest period of time. And not just because it worked for me. It's just, I have anyone that comes to train with me, they're blown away with how much progress they make in such a short time. I have people come in to train with me, maybe in 3 or 4 weeks, they make more progress than they made in the past year or two, because their body has become accustomed to whatever they're doing, and they're just stagnating. And you take the intensity to the next level, the body starts to react again.
Right. Well, I have to say, I am actually whenever I went to train with Marc Getty, my trainer, I had never trained this way. And I'd been training probably I trained for about a year. And then I stood on stage. I think I trained for about 2 years before I went to train with Marc. I trained with a trainer, then I trained myself. And I'm a badass, right? I don't shy away from hard work. Yeah. So I was training as hard as I possibly could in the gym. And then I went to train with Marc. And the first time we trained was legs. And I couldn't walk without pain for 11 days. I'm not joking, 11 days. I had to walk backwards down the stairs. It was insane. But my body, my quads literally doubled in size in the next year. I've been training with Marc now just under 2 years, it'll be 2 years in April. And my body I've gone from 57 kilos to 67 kilos. I stand on the scales at the minute. Stage lean, I'm about 65 and a half, 66 kilos. So, in 2 years I've put on,
that's very dramatic.
8 kilos of muscle. Like that's 16 and a half, 17, nearly 20 pounds of muscle. Like and just through training this way. Of course, my gains are slower now because, I've been training this way for a long time, but you're right. So training to failure, right? It's something I'm always, always, always teaching. Tell me about how important lifting to failure is. Can you back me up on this?
Yeah. It's important, but it's also very intense. So, you got to balance the volume with it. You can't do a lot of volume training like this. In fact, there's no need to do a lot of volume.
Right. You wouldn't want to. I heard you say so many times.
You also wouldn't want to. I do it for a joke sometimes when somebody's training and we're doing legs, and we've only done 6 or 7 sets, and I'm like, you want to do more? Really? Would you like to do some more? And they're like, please.
They're like, no.
I don't need to do any more. Most people because it's just a bit of a shock to the system. Most people in their training legs with me the first time, they vomit. So,
right.
It's just such an oxidant and debt that builds up, and it's a bit of a shock. I had one guy, Dan Christian, training with me, and his legs were weak, and we trained together because we train just once a week because you've got to recover from this stuff. So once a week for about 8 weeks, and his legs were transformed. And he threw up every workout, but good for him. He came back every week, and the results were really dramatic.
Right. I heard actually, Marc said to me the other week something about, and this is just as a slight going off at a tangent, and I don't know whether you know anything about this, that the hormone that is released whenever you are pregnant in the first trimester that makes you feel nauseous is the same hormone that is released whenever your central nervous system takes a beating, like on a big leg day.
No,
is that something have you ever heard that before?
No, I didn't know that. But some of the noises coming out of people sounds like giving birth, so maybe.
Yeah, well, the noise at the start of this podcast, actually, a lot of people, it's funny because we were getting a lot of people writing in and saying, the intro to this podcast is me doing this as well with the music. And a lot of people were writing in, leaving reviews and saying, love your podcast, Kim, but the noise at the start really scares me. Or I was on the treadmill and nearly fell off. I thought there was somebody crying. So I actually did an intro, and I said to them, listen guys, I have to tell you where that came from. I said, it was my PB on an incline hack squat. I said it was 190 kilos. Now my PB is 200 kilos for 6, but this was a year ago. It was 190 kilos. I said it was my first rep of my final failure set. And I said, let me tell you something, I wasn't thinking anything except getting down to the bottom and getting back up again. So the scream comes from there.
This level of effort and whatever noise you need to make or whatever.
Right.
This should be normal. Yeah, it used to be normal in the gym. That was the culture, right? Now it's like, it's not so normal, and you turn heads, and some gyms don't want you to do that because you're going to upset the people in there and everything. So, great if you're pushing real training, and you're going to be in pain, you're going to make some noise. It's not a pretty thing,
No.
But it's about hard work. That's what it's about, and there's no way really around that. Like, it doesn't matter what program you do or whatever. You got to do some hard work here if you want to get past a certain level. Most people make some progress for 12, 18 months, and after that, you'll see that they don't really change that much, because after that point, the body's getting accustomed to a certain level of stress. And if you don't go beyond that, it's got no reason to react. The body wants to keep balance, so it doesn't want to keep changing. So you've got to give it a good bloody reason to do that. And training into the zone that you're uncomfortable in is the only way to do that.
Right. Now, I'm actually just going to use this interview as kind of my personal Dorian Yates coaching session, because another question I want to ask you as well. So whenever you are training, like, how long were your training sessions? About like 40 minutes, 45 minutes or longer?
Around 40, 45 minutes. Maybe a leg day was longer just because the rest periods were longer.
Mm-hmm.
On a leg day, we used to do full legs. So quads, hamstrings and calves all together. Maybe if you had weak calves, I wouldn't recommend that. I'd do your calves separately, but I didn't have that. My calves were strong. So
they were.
We used to rest more. Obviously, the heavier, the more muscle involved, the more weight used, the more oxygen debt you're going to build up. So the longer you're going to need to recover between sets in order to give the next set 100% muscular failure, not running out of gas. So leg was probably the longest day, just because the longer rest periods. But that was never more than an hour. So I would say average 45 minutes, 4 times a week. So 3 hours a week in the gym was what I was doing to win 6 Mr Olympias, which doesn't sound much, but you have to understand the concept that it's about the intensity. It's not about.
Right.
If I truly believed that it would help me to be a better bodybuilder and to win the Mr Olympia, if I thought that doing 20 hours a day in the gym lifting weights would help me, I would have done it.
Right.
Because I was driven to be a winner, so whatever it took. But I realized that it took less and less in terms of volume and time in the gym, more on focus and intensity. And you can't, people say to me, I've been training for 2 hours today in the gym. Well, I know they haven't been training for 2 hours, because you couldn't sustain that level of training for a couple of hours.
No, you're right. They're just maintaining. One other thing I actually want to ask you is...
Yeah, most people going to the gym are maintaining. Take a picture in your mind of the people in the gym when you go tomorrow and go back in a year's time. Most of them will look the same, which is fine if that's what your goal is. But if you're kidding yourself that you want to try and improve, then you need a plan, and you need, proper recovery, and you need to really push yourself and so on. You can't just wander in the gym and expect to get like results as you do in the first year or so, because your body's not used to anything. If you haven't never done push-ups before, just doing some push-ups will give you some pec and delt development probably, but at some point your body gets used to that. So it's always, you must be progressive.
Now, let me ask you just on that point. Whenever people join my 18-month program, as they progress through the phases, sometimes they write, they come into phase, each phase is 10 weeks long, and they come into, say, phase 2, and they go, they post on our private Facebook group and they say, I'm a little disappointed because I've just downloaded the workout PDF, and like, apart from maybe leg press instead of incline hack squat or whatever, the exercises are really just the same. And I always say to them, well, do you want to be entertained or do you want to progress?
I have this issue as well. You have a lot of trainers out there right now. There's a whole industry of trainers and coaches and nutritionists, and
True.
They're selling products, and they want to sell as many products as they can. So in a lot of cases, I think it's a case of giving people what you think those people want.
Right.
And people always want something new and something different. Yeah?
Right.
So should I change my routine every month or every 2 months or every 6 weeks and change this and change that? Honest advice, guys. If you've got a good fucking exercise like leg press or squats or whatever it is, you're going to do those all the time. And you could ask myself, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lee Haney, any of the top champions. For instance, what did you do for chest? Nearly everybody did bench press or some version of bench press, incline press, and flies.
Right.
That's it. That's
it.
Because these exercises work. So I wouldn't advise somebody just to change the exercise, just so they kind of think they're getting something new. But the thing is, you lift more weight every time you get there. Do more reps. Do more. Not changing the exercise is not going to do it for you. Your body doesn't know what exercise it's doing. It doesn't know. It just knows if it's going beyond its limit, and it needs to adapt to that stress by building some more muscle. And there's only a certain amount of exercises that are really effective, and they're tried and tested, and they may vary from one person to another depending on their mechanics. And maybe you get burnt out on one exercise mentally. So just changing it to another exercise might stimulate you mentally, and therefore you give more physically. So there could be that aspect to it. Well, there is no physical reason to keep changing the exercises. My routine was pretty much always the same. The only thing that would vary would be I would train very high intensity, very heavy and all out for maybe 6 weeks. And then I would do a down cycle of working below my capacity, almost like active rest, giving the nervous system a rest, giving the body a rest, but not a total rest. So you're still lifting, but below capacity for a couple of weeks to let general recovery and then push again. So I do believe you need to cycle the training. You can't go 100% all of the time forever. You will get injured or get burnt out.
Right. But mentally as well as physically, I think.
Mentally and physically, yeah. So if you train really hard for 6 weeks and you're able to increase the resistance and make some progress, then it's kind of like you taking one little step back and maintaining for a while and then pushing again. And over the long period of time, I think you'll get more out of this rather than just pushing, and to some point where you get overtrained or you get injured and you're forced to take a rest anyway, and then you go backwards.
Right. One other thing I want to ask you about is your Mr. Olympia. How did your life change whenever you became Mr. Olympia?
Oh, it changed a lot in terms of financially, or not compared to other sports.
Yeah.
Not compared to other sports, but going from the only money I was earning really was just from the gym. Even my first professional show, I earned, I think it was $7,000. So it's not a lot. I had to fly to New York and get accommodation and all this stuff. So you're not really earning anything. So financially, it changed a lot. But other than that, it didn't change too much. I didn't want it to change too much because I wanted to keep myself hungry and in the right environment to be the best competitive bodybuilder I could be. It was not, the money was great and I was earning some decent money now. But it wasn't the prime goal. The main goal was to be as good as I could be. And one day I'm going to hang up my weightlifting belt and not be doing this anymore. So once I got to Mr. Olympia, then it was like, how good can I get? How far can we take this? That was kind of my mission at that point. And keeping myself in Birmingham, still training at my gym, with the family and all that stuff was keeping me stable, where I was thinking if I go to the States, so much stuff going on there, it would be a big distraction and everyone would put it on my time and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm. Did you actually enjoy the fame that came with all of your titles, your notoriety?
Yeah, to a degree. It's nice to be recognized for what you do. I think that's more to the point. But if I walk down the street and nobody ever recognizes me, it's fine with me. I don't really like that intrusion on my kind of privacy and stuff, if you like. But bodybuilding is a fairly small world, so if you go to the gym and you're seriously into your weights, you're probably going to know who Dorian Yates is, but not everybody. It's not like I can't walk down the street or anything, so fine. It's nice to be, it's more like I feel it's nice to be recognized for what you achieved, and people that are in that game who go to the gym and so on, I think they can appreciate what's gone into that, whereas somebody else that's not from this world wouldn't really, they can't really appreciate it really because they haven't tried it themselves and know how difficult it can be.
One of the things I always teach actually not in my programs, but in free stuff is about how I always say to people, yes, most people show up to the gym for, if you're like the wrong reason. I call it like doing the right thing for the wrong reason. They show up because they want to have a six pack or they want to get rid of their cellulite. Well, women anyway, certainly that I would coach, or they want to look really good in a bikini or whatever. But what they actually, I always say, like, you show up for that reason, but what you actually get is something much more profound. You get a sense of achievement, of discipline. You get a belief in yourself that you're the kind of person who shows up every day and does the work. And I think that that's so much more important than the body that you achieve. And I suppose you probably felt that as well, going from, having a rocky childhood, if you like, to, finding the gym and putting your focus into that.
Absolutely. The mental side of it was probably more important.
Do you think it saved you?
Anything really.
Saved in inverted commas. You were in a detention center. You had a rocky childhood.
Yeah. And it's something I could put my energy into that was positive rather than being. It's easy to fall into negativity in those circumstances,
especially with all that testosterone.
Exactly.
You're young.
Yeah, exactly.
It is true.
So I was focused in there, and I loved the challenge. Yeah, of course, it's great to have whatever physical results, six pack or big arms or whatever it is you want to get. But it's the process of getting it that it's almost like mastery over yourself.
Yes.
Your impulse is not to be uncomfortable, right?
Of course.
And then
I walk around sore every day. There's not one day I wake up and I'm not sore somewhere in my body. And that takes a lot of discipline.
Even the soreness, when you feel it, you feel like, wow, I've done something here. I've achieved something. And that builds on itself.
Yeah, you feel alive.
Confidence that you are able to get through some tough shit and you've done it, and and then next time it will be a little bit easier because you've done that before. And I think the opposite can be true as well. If something comes along that's difficult and you kind of give up, then that can be a habit as well. So I think it's developing strength of character and positive habits, and that can then go into anything in your life, really.
Mm-hmm. You're right. We call them postulates. Actually, you build a postulate. So you develop a postulate that you're the kind of person who can get through hard shit. You do it every day. Like I was training legs this morning and we had 180 kilos on the V squat. And when I get under 180 kilos in the V squat, I'm not, not thinking of anything except not being squished like a pancake. And, but you come away and it's, you go through the fear, you go through, I have several doses of the runs, usually vomit after leg day, but, you go through that every week and you realize, you can be on the toilet, you can be vomiting, you can, have your adrenaline running, your nervous system can take a beating, and then you can walk away and here I am now chatting to you at 5 p.m. in the evening, You're still alive.
What I used to say to people when they train legs with me, like, you'll still be alive afterwards. It's like,
barely hanging on by a thread.
I'm just asking for a couple of minutes of your time here to do this step. Yeah, how bad can it be? It's going to last 2 minutes maximum. Like, come on.
One final failure set in like 5 exercises. That's at 5 minutes. I'm asking you for 5 minutes out of 24 hours. The next
one is going to come up. We'll just focus on this one at first. But yeah, when the more things the more hardship you can get through, the easier it is next time, and the more conditioned you are. It's like conditioning your mind.
Right. How important, Dorian, was mindset to your success? Like, give us a taste of how you used your mind to get an advantage in life or in bodybuilding or whatever.
I was just totally obsessed with every aspect. First of all, learning, which I really enjoyed learning about nutrition, about training, and everything else that's involved in competitive bodybuilder. So it was the whole process was fascinating for me, and it was very individual as well. Right, it's not a team sport now. Maybe a little bit more with trainers and coaches, but I think I was well suited to that mentally for it being individual endeavor. And I guess I probably did want to show people, like, hey, I can do this. I've done this myself, where probably a lot of people wouldn't have, they would have wrote me off when I was younger.
I've heard that you are, you eat predominantly a plant-based diet now. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the way it's worked out, because I'm, as I said, I'm always learning, always studying. And my questions are different now. My questions are not how can I build as much muscle as possible, or get strong, or anything like that. My question now is, what's the best diet for my health, for my longevity, for my quality of life, for getting older? And I read quite a lot and watch a lot, and I came to the conclusion that a plant-based diet is the answer to that, and it's the only diet that doctors have used. There's a couple of doctors in the States, documented to reverse heart disease and reverse cancer. No drugs, no surgery, just solely the diet. So if it can reverse disease and cure disease, then I think that's point to that. That's the healthiest way to eat. I do still eat some fish occasionally and some free-range eggs, but red meat, no. Chicken, I pretty much gave that up. So I kind of just phased it out and didn't go from one day to another. And I saw how I felt, and then I go back and, okay, let me see how I feel about eating a steak. I had one and I felt shitty, didn't like it, didn't feel good. So, okay, I won't do that again. And kind of just slowly went like that. And then, of course, there's going to be another question. Is the best diet for your health the best diet for your pursuit of bodybuilding? And I don't know the answer to that. And it may be that there are two different things. Because the diet that I'm on now is naturally fairly low in protein. I do take a vegan supplement like protein, which I'm going to have in my range shortly as well, available for people, because a lot of people are asking me. We're going to have that. So I have one of those a day. And then, it's like lentils and rice and chickpeas and vegetables, things like that. So I don't count exactly, but I'm probably only getting like 70, 80 grams of protein a day. Whereas when I was bodybuilding, and we can question whether this was needed or not, but anyway, it's the case, I was probably eating 350, 400 grams of protein a day.
What did you weigh at the time? 220,
I weighed like over 300 pounds. Yeah.
Over 300 pounds, yeah.
So now I'm 220, so I wouldn't require as much. But could you be a professional bodybuilder on a vegan diet? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, it may be possible with a lot of supplementation, but it would be difficult.
It would be very difficult. I always say to people, it depends on your goal. Like my audience is 60% women. Yes, there's a lot of men. Yeah. Like I talked about my trainer, Marc. Marc is, I don't know what weight he is, but he weighs a lot. And he's, and he eats a lot of plant-based food, but he's also said, when I'm prepping for a show, and it's how on earth would I get the amount of protein that I believe that I need, and I'm not, he always says, not willing to take a chance to find out, and I think that's really what happens. If you find something that works for you, listen, I'm not one of these preachy vegans. I always say vegans are the meanest bunch of bastards you'll ever meet. Like they're so nasty to each other.
Anyone that takes a very extreme point of view is usually, it's not
fearful,
not helpful,
Yeah. No, you're right, 100%. I would say just it depends on your goal.
I live with my wife and she eats meat, but that's, we don't really have an issue about that. I've made my choice, she's made hers, and who knows, they might change later on anyway. So
yeah, it's important to be flexible, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, 10 years ago I was eating meat and not really thinking anything about it. So now it's a kind of multiple thing where I'm coming from a health point of view, but I'm also coming from a spiritual point of view, that I don't really want to be involved in the suffering that the animals go through in a industrial kind of fashion that they're treated in now. It's not just the fact that they're being killed. I mean, I'm not squeamish. I used to work actually when I was a teenager in a slaughterhouse, so I know everything that goes on there. And it's just the life of the animal. It's not just the point that it doesn't feel good when it's dying. It's the whole life. They're suffering in cages, and so I just decided I didn't want to be part of that. But that's just my choice. I don't go around standing on a soapbox and telling people what they should do.
Well, here, listen, you're on a vegan podcast, so you can shout it from the rooftops here. Yeah. Although we do have, interestingly, do you know that only 20% of people who are in my network or who purchase my programs are actually vegan? Only 20%. Yeah. 60% are not vegan. They're like omnivore, carnivore, or whatever. I got told off the other day. Apparently it's not a carnivore anymore. It's an omnivore. So I don't know. Yeah. Apparently I got the labels wrong. But yeah, you're right. No, and I think that, obviously you're a deep thinker. And for me, people ask me all the time, well, why do I never do any activism? And I never have any vegan activism on my page. I never, and that kind of stuff. And I would say, well, firstly, you never changed anyone's mind by making them feel bad about themselves. Secondly, I think that, part of my choice for being veganism, yes, it is, or being vegan, sorry, it is about, how the animals are treated too, but it's also about looking at the macro scale. I say to people, do you ever, it's about thinking a little bit more deeply about, about how things get to our plate. And it's not only that the animals are, how they're treated. For me, it's about, the energy that goes into feeding one cow for meat.
It doesn't make sense either.
Yeah, it's insane. It could feed 2,000 hungry people by the time you've raised it, you've given, you've farmed the grain, you've bagged the grain, you've got them the grain, you fed that to the cow. It's about really just, having a view bigger than, what's for dinner tonight. It's about looking, on a much wider level at the world. But I think, Dorian, that kind of thinking comes, certainly, like, I'm in my 40s, but I think it, as you get wiser and more mature and you stop being so self-centered and focused on, what, as we generally are when we're younger, I think that's what happens a little as you get older. And certainly I know you're into meditation and things as well now, aren't you? You're much more
I'm
spiritual. You're a spiritual guru now.
I guess I was meditating before when I was lifting weights. It was,
right, moving meditation.
Now I'm doing it more formally, like to raise my energy and keep in touch with something bigger, whatever you want to call it. Whether you want to call it God or the universe or the collective. There's something bigger that we're all part of, and I just take a bit of time every day to try and connect with that and remind myself of that.
I think you're going to have hordes of female fans after this. Let me tell you something. Not only are you a badass,
well, like you have achieved. Right now my Instagram is 92% male, so we've definitely got some.
Really, 92%.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, of course, it does make sense. Well, let me tell you, there's a movement of, and I want to actually talk about your DY Academy in a second as well. But let me tell you something now. There's a whole movement of women that I believe, or I would like to believe, that I am leading into, like I did a free masterclass the other day, and I said to the guys, I was like, listen, stop training like a girl. I was like, stop it. This is all women on this masterclass. It's like, stop training like a girl, like.
Yeah, but I trained a few ladies, and in my experience, I don't know. Maybe
if you find the right one, they'll.
They're coming to train with Dorian Yates, so they must come with something in mind and know what to expect. But they tend to whimper and cry and make excuses a lot less than the guys do.
Right. Yeah. Well, but we do go through childbirth, so
different pain threshold.
Yeah, 4 times naturally at home. I do sometimes feel whenever I'm actually, whenever I'm training, especially legs, I have to say, people have said to me, God, you make some noise, because I put up my training videos on Instagram and people say, God, Kim, that actually scared me when I watched that. And I'm like, listen, guys, see whenever I'm performing that exercise, I'm not thinking. I am just, my body makes sounds like it does during childbirth when you're in labor about to give birth. I have 4 kids, let me tell you, you're not thinking. You're not thinking about the noise. You don't think about anyone in the gym. And if you are, you're not concentrating on the exercise and you will not be able to push more load, Tell me, Dorian, I want to know, you're launching, you have your DY Nutrition, isn't that right? Which is a range of supplements and...
We have a DY Nutrition, which is at the moment, we have the Shadow line, which is a sports nutrition line, bodybuilding line, if you like. And we're in the background now developing a whole new line, which is more health and wellness. We're working on an immunity product, which is apt at the moment with this virus and everything.
Of course, yeah.
Products,
get it out there quick.
Products. So working on all of that. And I'm working on building a platform, DY Academy, to give kind of custom advice from myself and a nutritionist and some other people that I've certified in my methods. So they'll get their program and their advice and updates and everything from myself and the team there.
So DY Academy, do you have a launch date for it? Can you tell us any more about it?
We're still kind of working on it. I want to get everything more or less lined up before we do a launch date.
Right.
Within the next 2 months, for sure.
Ooh. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Excited. And of course, though, as we were saying in the beginning, before we came live on the interview, everybody's training from home at the minute now. It's like...
Yeah, maybe we'll have to have a home training section. We'll see how it works out. But it's just... I hate to see people wasting time and energy, and that's just what I see so much in the gym. People go in, they've got good intentions, they want to achieve something, but they're going about it all wrong. So I thought if I can get something up there that's, that can reach a lot of people and it's affordable, but still individual advice, that's what we're trying to do with DY Academy.
It sounds amazing. It sounds absolutely amazing. Dorian, this has been absolutely insanely helpful. Thank you so much. It's been so nice to have you on here, because honestly, all they ever hear about on this podcast is me banging on about, how many times can I say, train harder, eat more, lift more load, stop changing your exercises.
When the lockdown's over, maybe yourself and your trainer should get over to Spain and we go through something together.
Here, Dorian, can I tell you something? If you ever want to make that happen, I'm there with bells on. I'll bring a camera crew and we'll...
No, let's do it. Let's show your audience how it's done.
Here, I would love that. And you know what? You've said it now, live in front of hundreds of thousands of people.
Everyone's heard me now. I can't get
Everyone's heard you, so it's going to have to happen. It's going to have to happen. And also, whenever DY Academy launches, please do let me know, and I will share it out to all my network as well. Awesome. We do have a lot of people, I have a lot of competitors follow me who want to compete and that kind of stuff. And they always ask me, do you train people? Do you do prep? And I'm like, no, I don't. I only competed 7 times. So I don't have enough experience to prep somebody and to, get them to the stage and that kind of way. But I do design a pretty good training program, I have to say. But definitely I would love to.
I'll be having a look at your site. Well.
Yeah. We'll set that up 100%. But Dorian, honestly, this has been so amazing. The advice that you gave, just the fact that you were willing to kind of dig deep and share about your childhood and all that stuff, it really means a lot that you were so candid with us. And it's been such a fantastic experience having you on here. And I just want to say thank you.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure.
Great stuff. Well, listen, thank you so much. And I'm going to say I'll chat to you soon. I'll see you soon. If I'm coming out to Spain, whenever this coronavirus is over and I can travel.
As soon as the gym's open, yeah?
As soon as the gym's open, you let me know. And Marc Getty and I will be there. Marc Getty, you'll be listening to this. Marc will be peeing his pants right now. How to make a grown man cry, Dorian. How to make a grown man cry. I'm not even joking.
Well, if we do legs, you might see him cry.
Oh, that would give me so much pleasure. You have no idea. Because he makes me cry every single week. So it'd be nice to see him.
That's my favourite. I like torturing people.
Oh, I love it. Dorian Yates, thank you so much. You have been absolutely amazing.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks a lot.
Wasn't that absolutely awesome? Oh my God. I don't know if you're as excited as I am. You're probably not, because whenever you meet someone who is your idol, who you've looked up to for a while, whose training philosophies you've followed, it really is a very special time in my life that, that I have been able to speak to Dorian in person, interview him, and I really did, kind of treat it as my own personal coaching session, I have to say. And here, you guys heard it from the horse's mouth, didn't you? Dorian Yates and I are going to train together. And I have already reached out to my team in text message. I'm like, okay, Dorian has said we're going to train together. So I'm going to bring my team with me to video it. We're going to put that out there. You're going to see the Sculpted Vegan being trained hard. But not only that, you're going to see Marc Getty being trained hard. And I think that's more exciting than anything else, because everyone just sees Marc, standing there training me. And whenever Marc puts his sessions on Instagram, do you think he puts on his really hard sessions where he's grunting and swearing and his form's going? No, you only ever see is Marc. Yeah, you see him training hard, but you don't see him really shitting himself. So I think that I think I would actually pay money just to watch Marc Getty not only cry when he meets Dorian, but actually shit himself and vomit during leg day. So watch this space for that to happen, because I swear to God, it is going to happen. As soon as we come off lockdown from this coronavirus, it absolutely 100% is going to happen. Guys, if you enjoyed this episode, please do leave me a review. Don't forget that we choose a winner every single month from the reviews left on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. If you do leave a review, please send me a DM of your review on Instagram so that we can flag it there as well. It just means that we definitely won't miss it. Not that we miss them, because we are very vigilant about going through them, but I do want to make sure that I don't miss it. You can leave a review on every single podcast, which gives you 4 chances a month to win a Sculpt and Shred program, or any program of your choice. But most people do choose the Sculpt and Shred because it is the most expensive program that we have. So don't forget to leave a review. You could be chosen to win one of our coveted programs. And thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate your time and attention, and I will see you next week for another episode of Strong and Sculpted. Have a wonderful week, no matter where you are or what you are doing. This is Kim Constable, and I will talk to you soon.